The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame. Shadow boxes come with a lifetime guarantee.
This is The Sports Source, presented by Bill Hotz and Associates, and by Renewal by Andersen, with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into The Sports Source. We're happy to have you with us. Today's show, of course, brought to you by Bill Hotz and Associates. We appreciate them for bringing you the show. We appreciate you for partaking of our show. We have a ton of football. We have a little bit of basketball as well, but lots of football. We dive right in. First segment brought to you by Bill Hotz and Associates. Nothing can ruin your day like a car accident. But if you've been injured by a careless driver, you better make sure that that car accident doesn't ruin your life much more than your day. The attorneys at Bill Hotz and Associates know the ropes and they know your rights. They know how to fight for you. Bill Hotz and Associates, the folks to get in touch with should you find yourself the victim of a careless driver. All right. I am usually the victim of these careless talk show guys, but it's good to have you here. Bob Hodge, Mike Griffith, Josh Ward, Chuck Cavaleris. Gentlemen, thanks one and all. It has been, we had one of our 2 reruns last week. We do 2 a year usually. That's 50 new shows a year, so we're not slacking on you. But last week we did a rerun, so we didn't get a chance to talk about the big news that Phillip Fulmer is back. The University of Tennessee has brought him back as a special advisor to President Joe DiPietro. $100,000 a year. He'll advise on community, athletics, and university relations. From a PR move with the public, it's being viewed as a huge positive. It's being looked at very positively. And interestingly, this was my question right off the bat, where's John Currie on this? You know, you went toe-to-toe with a guy for the AD's job. You two don't have a real good history because you're viewed as helping to push that guy out. You get the job, and then the next guy becomes the special advisor to your ultimate boss. That looks bizarre. But John Currie has said very much that he's behind it, and the people I've talked to at UT say it's not just lip service, that John Currie really was on board with this. Gentlemen, I'll throw it out, and I'm sure this conversation is going to go all over the place, but initial thoughts on Tennessee bringing in Phillip Fulmer as a special advisor. Mike Griffith, we know you want to talk first. Go right ahead.
I guess so, John. Thanks. I think John Currie is behind it. I think it's the 500-pound gorilla off of his back. I mean, everybody was so worried about Phillip Fulmer's feelings and how displaced he was when John Currie got the job. What would the relationship be like? The tension, the pressure. Would people resent Currie because of the history John mentioned? I think it's a huge relief to John Currie. And if you think about it, you know, John Currie has proven at Kansas State that he can fundraise, that he can handle all those AD business aspects, but he didn't have the type of personality that maybe would reach out to former Vols or maybe unite the fan base like a Phillip Fulmer. I think you combine Phillip Fulmer and John Currie, maybe get Doug Dickey, coach and businessman. How about that?
That would be a very positive. And it's interesting. The guy who behind the scenes helped these two heal their wounds. There's a picture on the internet of Fulmer and Majors shaking hands, and who's there, like the referee before the fight? Yeah. Doug Dickey, making sure their hands actually touch. And he's the one that kind of brought this together because Currie stayed close to him, had him come out to speak at Kansas State. He worked under Currie takes a lot of heat for having served under Mike Hamilton. He also served under the best athletic director I've ever seen over there in Doug Dickey. And, of course, Dickey was the AD over Fulmer, and, of course, he was his coach. So Doug Dickey, who you mentioned, deserves some credit in making this whole thing happen. Rest of you guys, thoughts on just the overall move to bring Phillip Fulmer back into the family in this way?
I think the move was very positive, but I also can turn it around and see a big negative. The first thing that came, a lot of people talked about was, okay, Steve Spurrier goes down to Florida in a very similar role to what Coach Fulmer's going to do. The difference, though, is Steve Spurrier had not tried to be the AD. He had not gone through the whole process and even come as close to, I think, as some people over UT even hinted to Coach Fulmer, hey, you might have this job.
At least one booster, yeah.
So I think you have a little bit of a difference there, but that said, I think overall it will be a positive because I think Coach Fulmer will be out there with the community relations, and I've said it before. I've been around Coach Fulmer away from the football aspect of everything he was in, and he is a really fun guy to be around. Yeah. I think that personality that you didn't see a lot of when he was the head coach in this role can help him. However, there is the if he leans over to DiPietro and says, "No, I wouldn't have done that."
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, that's to me the negative. It's all up to Philip Fulmer if this is a positive or negative. Because if he's doing what he's doing right now, he's saying all the right things. All the VFLs got back on board. The people who were upset when he didn't get it and were hurt, they're all back on board. He's saying the right things. If he decides, as Bob says, to go to DiPietro and say, if I were the AD, I'd be doing it this way.
But I mean, I think it's a great move as long as you're having a good season. But then if things start going a little sour, boy, I can see it. And who negotiated the salary? Boy, I mean, that's pretty cheap to get Philip Fulmer for what all
I don't know.
he's
I'd take $100,000.
But a year? I mean, when you figure, and I think he also sees this role as being kind of a lobbyist in Nashville. I think he's going to be, from what I've heard said, so it's kind of a broad role. I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, is he a potential interim coach? You don't know.
Oh, boy.
I had somebody else mention that to me the other day.
What's being floated out there.
I can't. Here's the thing: Tennessee doesn't have a history of hiring interim coaches.
Right.
They've only Majors and Fulmer. Yeah, Majors and Fulmer got whacked late in the year. So I don't know that they would.
But I
do
think it's a
anything
great
like
move.
that.
I really do.
You wonder what. Let's put it this way: Philip Fulmer is a very political guy, and I think that's fair to say. When he got this job, somebody tweeted me a picture of Frank Underwood from House of Cards, which I laughed at. But I think it does come back to how he handles his role. Josh, your thoughts on it?
Well, at some point they needed to move on, and from the search, everything that was, even the pre-search, I guess, and then the response in March and April when John Currie was announced and then hired as the athletic director. At some point you have to move on from that, and this can at least help with whatever the next step is. And if they are both, John Currie and Philip Fulmer, working to help Tennessee, as long as they do that in a professional manner, and right now, why would we say that they won't? It doesn't mean that they have to get together for breakfast and coffee every day, but if they are working to help Tennessee, and Philip Fulmer being back helps those that were upset back in March and April, then overall I think that helps the university, it helps the athletic department.
Well, I think there's something else you're moving along from too, and that's the firing of Coach Fulmer. I mean, now he's back at Tennessee in official capacity. And so it's sort of like you've bridged the gap that has been there with him.
He has his professional dignity back, and I thought he took a big step forward.
I didn't realize he had his dignity taken from him. Okay.
Yeah, when you get fired from your alma mater with 3 games left in the season and you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, that's
kind of like the guy that he replaced.
That's pretty damn shameful if you ask me.
Games.
I don't know many other first ballot Hall of Famers fired, but off of that point, I thought he took a big step forward.
We got some numbers later. We'll talk about why that happened.
When he said that he was not qualified for the athletic director position. He was told he was not qualified.
Now that's an interesting point. He's also the one that people felt he thought he had the job.
He was told he had the job.
Okay, and then he came out and said, I knew I was never going to get it, which is the truth.
No, he said he wasn't qualified on the front end.
He said he was told he wasn't qualified and he knew he wasn't getting. He did it because he loved the university, et cetera, et cetera. But somehow that story got out that he felt he was going to get it and he didn't get it. So which is it? Did he feel he was going to get it, or did he know all along he wasn't going to get it?
I think he was asked to put himself in the running for it, as I said, when it happened. And when he didn't get it, I think he felt like, well, why in the heck did you guys ask me to put my name out there?
But you see why A and B are two different things. Those are the things. Let's put it this way. There's a huge upside, much bigger upside than downside with this.
Oh, no doubt.
But anybody who's ever been fired by someone, hard to forget that. I would think, you can forgive it. May be tough to forget that. And if you're talking about Philip Fulmer lost his professional dignity, if that's the way you feel, then it would be even tougher to forgive somebody who you felt strongly
played a role
in it.
Yeah,
so,
and I think it was. But
so that's going to be interesting. What is their relationship back?
But I think the Majors thing, I think Fulmer realizes he'd be a hypocrite. If he couldn't get over it, Johnny never got over it, Philip realized he got to get over it to get the unity back.
Let me go ahead and show a poll I did on Twitter, and the positivity reigns is what we put up there, if we can go to it. There you go. I asked people, was the hire of Philip Fulmer as an advisor, it is a smart move. That was, two-thirds of you say it's a smart move. A bad move was very low on the list. Less than 10% said it's a risky move, actually. And then 30% said purely political. And I do think from a Curry's perspective, you do have to wonder, is he looking at this and saying, I can either have Philip Fulmer against me and all of those VFLs that played for him who were not happy with my hiring. I can have them against me, or I can take the risk of being all on board with getting him involved over here and hope that having him over here doesn't backfire on me. I think that's probably the way you'd have to look at it.
Well,
I'm just looking at it from a business sense.
And I'll break it down about the way your poll broke down. I think, in my mind, I think it is a really smart move, but there is an element of risk. I don't know if I would have it purely political as high as it was, but yeah, I think it's a great move. But
Well,
there
the
is some
politics
risk in
of it is the fundraising now. The doors open up for fundraisers that were upset about Fulmer, and now all of a sudden, cha-ching, now that Philip Fulmer's back in the fold, people are interested in donating.
And I'll also say this. There's not a move you can make that doesn't involve some amount of risk.
Sure.
Whatever you're doing, it can always backfire. And on this show, we try and cover anything that could happen, positive or negative. So
Especially
I think we covered it here.
at the University of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
we
it's-
have a
it's-
long history of things going wrong.
It's
Or-
much
or an
better,
odd way.
much better having Coach Fulmer on board and involved than it is not, especially in terms of friction and the divide that has been there for so long, and then moving forward. Just like Mike says, in terms of fundraising, Philip Fulmer could be the guy picking up the phone, making the call to get that donation.
Again, I think whether this succeeds or fails, it's all in his court. And so far, home run. Home run.
But it's a part-time job.
For
He said-
$100,000 and you think he's underpaid. All
I
right.
do.
You and Sean Adams. I'll take a part-time job. I'll take that for $100,000. When we come back, we got a lot of football to cover today. We got incredible numbers on Tennessee's home field advantage through the years that you really would be surprised to see. But up next, Holly Warlick. A lot of stuff has been looking like it's going off the rails over there. Is the perception worse than the reality? We'll discuss. We'll back on the Sports Source.